Hi, my name is Ryan Eiler, and I'm the designer of Quodd Heroes. The video that follows is a walkthrough of the tutorial mini campaign that comes in the scenario book. So if you follow along with this entire video, it's in sort of 3 parts, you'll learn how to play Quodd Heroes. There are a few little bits here and there that you'll have to read the rulebook for, but for the most part, you'll finish this video and have a pretty clear idea how to play Quodd Heroes. There is another version of the tutorial video that's coming that will be sort of feature animated examples of how to move, how each of the movement skills works and how pushing works and all of that stuff. That's sort of still in development. It's taken a little longer than planned. So I thought this video would get you guys started in terms of how to play the game. And what I encourage you to do is to actually set up and follow along as I play through the tutorial, and that will sort of get you going a little more quickly than if you just watch the video. So set up as I show you. If you need to pause the video, do that, and then just sort of try to play along. You don't have to make the same decisions that I make, and you'll have access to different cards when we get to the cards. But I think that might be the best way to go about learning. So good luck, and I hope you like the video. If you like it, go ahead and click like. If you don't, feel free to comment or reach out in any possible way, and enjoy. First thing you're going to need to do is open your rulebook to page 3 and set up the board as shown in the rulebook, which is what we see here. I've placed some additional elements here that we're going to need in the next scenario, which are the tokens here. And the cards I've set aside for now because we won't be using them yet. You're going to take a player board for your character. Here I have Ang Min. You're going to take the 2 miniatures for your character. The reason we have 2 is one you will keep on the board, and the other you can use in your hand to plan your movements without picking your character up off the board. We will need the skill tiles for your character. These are Ang's. The upgrade tiles for your character, which we don't actually need yet, but I'll set those aside. And the reference card for your character, which you can use to help you find the appropriate tiles that belong to your character. Once you've found those, I recommend that you bag them and store them together that way. So I'm going to use actually this painted version of Ang Min because it'll be easier to see on the board with the camera. So I'll keep one of the other miniatures handy to hold in my hand and plan. But for now, I'm going to start by setting my character where I would like to be on the map. Then I'll take my skill tiles and I'll set them up on my board, assigning 1 to each face of the character. And I'm going to set them up in this particular way, and I'll explain why in a moment. So you'll note that these skill tiles actually have 2 sides. One side has a kind of a brown tarnished icon of the fist in the top right hand corner, and the other one, the fist icon, is gold. And there are additional icons on the card. So we want the tarnished kind of brown side, which is the default side of the skill tiles. And we place them all in that way, and we want to make sure our player board is on the A side of the player board. In the lower left-hand corner of the player board, you'll see a little A. We want the A side of the player board, and I've assigned my skills as shown here. So the first thing I'll do is explain each of these movements and what they do. So at the start of the game, we're only going to be moving 1 space with each of these, and we'll talk about upgrading and what that means in the second scenario. So we're going to play through this and learn sort of bit by bit how to play the game. In order to move on your turn, you always initiate your movement with what we call a natural tumble. And tumbling is turning your character over. The only time in the game you turn your character over is when you are asked to tumble. And every movement phase always starts with tumbling 1 space. This is called the natural tumble, so it's not upgradable. And then activating the skill that is on top of the character after that initial tumble. I'll cover what each of these movement skills does first before I begin teaching the rest. So the first is that each of these tiles illustrates how you move with them. The simplest ones are the slide, which is moving your character in a straight line orthogonally. And the distance that you move with this skill is equal to the number of this movement icon, which is on the side of your player board. It looks like a little arrow. How many of those you have in your movement track. So at the start of the game, you only have 1, so you can move 1 space with each of these. During this entire scenario here, we will only be able to move 1 space with each of our skills. The next movement type we have here is diagonal slide, which behaves the exact same way as this slide, except that it is diagonal in nature.
So moving diagonally and not orthogonally. Then we have dash, and dash lets us move in any direction with each movement point, which means if I can move 2 spaces, and right now I can only move 1, I can move in any direction with each step I take on the board. Whereas the other skills have to move in a straight line. They cannot change directions. Once you start moving east, for example, all of your movement has to go east. The next skill we'll talk about is the jump skill, which lets you jump over spaces, like for example these walls here. A jump of 1 is actually over 1 space, but it's actually a 2-space distance movement. So a jump of 2 would be to clear 2 spaces and land on the 3rd space. So this is an orthogonal movement. Again, you cannot jump diagonally, and you must jump at least 1 if possible, which means that you have to jump over 1 space and move 2 spaces. The exception is if you wish to jump in this direction when there's a board edge. Board edges are hard objects. They are not pits. You cannot move off of them. You cannot be pushed off of them. So if I were here and I wanted to go east, for example, I would jump only 1 space because I'm blocked by the wall. Otherwise, I would have to jump, a full 2 spaces or jumping over 1 space. The other rule with jump is that you can jump onto walls as well as over them if you're at the right distance, for example. Once on top of a wall, you can move normally on a wall as if it were any other ground space, and you can move off of it freely as well. Okay, so the last skill we'll talk about is the tumble skill. So the tumble skill then, for example, if I have the tumble skill assigned to my back, as I do now, and I were to tumble forward, now I get to tumble again. And this time, because I'm activating a new skill, I can choose the direction of my single tumble. So I'll tumble forward. And now because my face has changed, I've tumbled, I must activate the skill that's on top. In this case, I have jump. And now I can jump over this wall. The Q on top of your character gives you a special power. Each character has 2 powers that you can use when you activate your Q by tumbling with your natural tumble or your tumble skill and finishing with your Q up. The bottom one is the same for all characters, which shows a fist, this skill icon, with an arrow spinning around it. That means you can rearrange these skill tiles and place them wherever you like. The top skill is unique to your character, and in the case of Ang Min here, she can explore, which is draw a card, to get a rune card. But we'll talk about cards when we get there. But for now, suffice to say that the bottom ability here lets us rearrange our skills. In a time scenario like this one, where I'm trying to get to this spot as fast as I can, I probably won't activate my Q if I can at all help it, because that basically, you don't move when you do that. You're just going to do something else. So we'll just start. So I will explain what I'm doing as I'm playing. So because I want to get there, I want to try to set up so I get across this bridge. If I go here, for example, I have some water elements to deal with, and a current, for example, when I step on this water current, it's going to push me forward 1 space. Which means on my next turn, you'll see that there's another arrow here. If I try to move forward, it's going to push me directly into a pit. So as we're moving, we must interact with all board elements that we encounter before activating our skills. So for example, if I were here and I tumbled onto this arrow, I would have to move forward, and my back says tumble. Now I can tumble backwards if I wanted to, which would move me back here, but it's not a very sort of productive movement. If I tumble forward, in that case, so I'm here and I tumble forward, I would go directly into the pit. The way pits work, which are these black spaces, when you are pushed into or you step on a pit, you immediately respawn, which is to move your character back to one of these respawn points, which are the face tiles you see on the board. A valid respawn point is one that is connected to another board. In this case, that is all of these here at the start, because this is an actual start space, and this one right here. This respawn point, this one, and this one don't count because they're not currently connected with another board edge. Therefore, if I fall into a pit here, I respawn here, and when I respawn, I can place my character Q up, and I can orient my character in any direction I like. A few other things to note on the board here: we have whirlpool icons. It looks like a swirly blue water. When you land on a whirlpool, you must rotate your character 90 degrees in the direction of your choice. That's sort of just spinning, not flipping your character over, not tumbling it, but so just spinning. So those are the things we need to look out for. Other tiles, for example, these stone ones that float over the water, those are legitimate tiles. They're not dangerous. You can step on them. Same is true with the bridges. That's basically it. So I know that I'm trying to reach this bridge because I think that's going to be the best way for me to get across. So I'll set up my character in this spot here, which is in a straight line to here. If you're playing this with more than one player, you'll set up your characters in a line, and the player who goes first, however you choose who goes first, will actually place their character on the start line last, and the player who's going last in turn order will place their character on the start line first. Alright, so I've got my player board set up and I'm ready to begin. I've kind of got an idea what I want to do here, but I'm not really going to spend a lot of time sort of thinking through all of my moves. I'm just going to go through and see, what happens. So I'll take a look at the turn structure here, and normally when you're playing the game by the full rules, and we'll get there by the end of this video, we would be playing cards before we move and or after we move, and then at the end we'd be exploring to get additional cards. We're not going to be playing with anything but the movement phase for this scenario, so we can ignore those things for now. Alright, so I'm going to begin by tumbling Angmin forward. Because I've tumbled, I must activate the skill on top. That is Angmin is a girl, a female character. I will tumble forward, and now I can tumble again. My feet are now up, which allows me to jump over one space and land here. That's the end of the first round. We're not playing with world events here, so we won't worry about that for now. And so the end of the round, we're not playing cards, we're not drawing cards, we're just going to move our round timer to number 6, and we're going to do this all over again. So, the next thing we're going to do is tumble forward again, because I want to go across this bridge. And I know that when I tumble forward, by looking at if I orient my little second character here, if I tumble forward, his face will be up, which will give me the dash ability, which could get me to this space. So let's just see what happens. Okay, so tumble forward. Now I have face up, and this lets me move one space in any direction. I'm going to move diagonally because that's the most efficient route to get through this cleared space. So now I've activated my skill and moved my one space. It's the end of my turn. I move the end of my turn and the end of the round because I'm the only player, and this moves down to number 5, and we'll do it again. So I'm going to now tumble this way with my natural tumble. Now I look at my top face. It is associated with the slide skill. I will move one space in this direction. That ends our movement again. So now we go down to number 4. And this time, if I move forward, it's going to activate my Q power. I'm going to start by tumbling forward. Because I'm moving, I have to activate the board first. And we can see it here. There's a water current there, so I'm going to tumble onto the water current, which pushes me to here. And now I activate the top of my character, which in this case isn't movement, it's my Q power. So because we're not playing with cards, I'm going to ignore the top power and not be able to use that for this scenario. But I will rearrange my skills. This will allow me to set up my next move. So what I'm going to do is set it up so that I'm going to tumble this way on my next turn. Sorry, I'll do it like this without touching my guy on the board. So I tumble forward, I'm going to be on this water current, and I'll slide back. Then I'm in this position again. If I have my jump skill on my back, I can jump directly onto the objective. So to do that, I just want to go and swap my jump onto my back and put tumble on my feet. I could arrange other things, but I don't need to. So that's the end of this round. Because I'm finished with my movement, I've activated my Q. I'll slide this down to 3, and we'll start our turn. So I'm going to tumble forward. This will slide me backward, one space, back where I was. And then I have the jump skill on top, and I can jump over one space. Boink. So I have now reached the objective and finished this scenario. So that's the end of this scenario. I finished possible 7 rounds in 4 rounds, which is actually, I think, my new personal record for this tutorial scenario. So we'll move on now to scenario number 2 in the tutorial, which is called The Benefits of Exploration. Hey, welcome to the Benefits of Exploration, the second tutorial in the mini tutorial campaign. In this scenario, we've got the same setup as the first board. We add a second board here at the top. I've sort of oriented this so that there's room on camera. But here is the spot that we finished in the last scenario. I will place my character in any orientation I like, but on that number 1 spot, since we're continuing on from that, I reset the timer to 5 rounds, and I put my character marker token here on the number 1 spot to indicate that I've reached the first checkpoint in this rally scenario. So if we were playing with other players, we would be racing to see who reaches number 4 first. In this case, I'm just trying to get from number 1, which I'm already on now, to 2, 3, then 4 in 5 rounds. We're going to be playing with cards this time. We will not be upgrading. This was still just 1 movement with each of our skills. So we're going to take, according to the rule book, the scenario book, we're going to dig through all the cards, and I apologize for the glare here because I'm using sleeves, but we're going to take only the cards that have 1 single dot here at the bottom. So you're going to separate all of those cards out. Then from those, you're going to separate out the single dot pet and single dot item cards. So the pets have a little paw symbol here and have an animal of some kind, and the item cards have a little gear icon up in the top center. Now you're going to randomly, I'm just shuffling these here, take 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's actually 4, and 5 pet cards without looking at them, set them down, and do the same thing with items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to shuffle these cards in with the rest of our single dot deck, and that will form our exploration deck for this scenario. This is intended to keep the effects that you encounter here in your first experience with cards as simple as possible, make learning the game as easy as it possibly can be. So I'm shuffling this deck, and I'm going to place it face up here so that you guys can see, and then I'm going to reveal 5 cards face up. I don't know how well I shuffled. I have 2 pets, a food, and a rune card. So now I'm actually going to just put one of these pets back. So we have a representative of each card type, and I'll pull out an item card. So this might be considered cheating by some, but basically I'm going to use it to explain the different card types and how they work. So before we begin playing, I'll explain each of the card types. So there are essentially four kinds of cards in Quodd Heroes. There are food and rune cards, which are these two here. So first we have a rune card. And rune cards, I'll try to focus on here. So rune cards have this little cube icon there, and they have artwork that is a cube of some kind. And they typically affect the board in some way, or affect other players or the board in some way, or create tokens or that kind of thing. In this case, this rune, sorry, I won't even go into what this particular card does, but essentially the thing to note about the rune cards in particular is that sometimes they have range, which is in the top right-hand corner of the card. In this case, it says 5, which is the area of effect around your character, like how many spaces it's valid to, counted orthogonally. So these are used once and discarded. So runes are single-use cards. This is a food card, quite a powerful one actually, called Dr. Ghost Pepper. And food cards are also used once and then discarded. They tend to affect your player in some way. So boosting their movement, or that's typically what they do, but they have other effects as well. In this case, this is actually the most powerful food card in the game, arguably. And it says double the total movement points for a target movement skill. So you know that it targets a skill, which is these movement skills here, if it has the skill icon in the top right-hand corner. There is, or are, a few food types that don't specifically target a movement skill, but that just sort of verifies it. I mean, the wording itself will also tell you that. So these are played once and then discarded. The last two types of cards are items and pet cards, and they're similar in that once you play them, they stay in play next to your player board and give you something you can do once each turn. On your turn, you can activate one item and one pet each turn. So in the case of this pet here called Flitter, it says +2 to your dash skill. So that means whenever you activate your dash skill, you can move 2 additional spaces, up to 2 additional spaces, because you have the Flitter card. And this spring launcher lets you create and place a spring token within 7 spaces of your hero each turn. and the spring tokens stay on the board once you play them. So you can see that having items and pets in play is going to give you a significant advantage and sort of help you out along the way. Items and pet cards, once you play them, will slot in to your player board alongside here. You can have one item and one pet, so there's a spot, a blue slot here with an icon of the item cards, and on the right hand side of your player board you have a place to keep a pet. So we'll put these here, slide this over, and flip up one more card, which is another rune. So now we have our lineup of 5 cards, and on your turn, at the end of your turn, once you've played cards, moved, and then played cards, and of course playing cards is optional, you can play as many cards as you like on your turn. Once you've done that, and exploring is to take one of the cards that are face up here or off the top of the deck for each explore symbol you have in your upgrade track. And at the start of every game, you will start with just one. So we'll be able to take one card at the end of our first turn. And on the second turn, we'll be able to play cards because we'll have them in our hand. All right, that should be everything we need to know, and I'll explain as we go along if we encounter anything that we haven't talked about yet. So because we're finishing that scenario, we are allowed to rearrange our skills because we're playing a new scenario, even though we're starting here, to sort of accommodate the start of our adventure here. So because I'm sort of stuck between two walls here, I'm going to choose to put my tumble skill on my right arm so that when I tumble in that direction from this point, I'm going to tumble this way, that will be up, and then I can sort of tumble through that gap in the wall and move a little bit farther. So then I'll put jump on my back because that will be up when I tumble again. So if I go here, we have tumble, now my back is up, and if that's jump, I can move, well, that's backwards, sorry, my back is up, and then I can jump a little bit farther. So that's what I'll do, set this up so that that's my plan to try to get to this number 2. I don't think, I'm certain I can't get to it this turn, but I will come kind of close, I guess. We'll talk about turn structure here. On your turn, there are 2 phases that involve playing cards. And playing cards is optional, and like I said, you can play as many cards as you like on your turn, the restriction being that items and pets can only be activated once per turn. So if you've activated an item card, you can play another item card down and return the other one to your hand, but you can't use its power because you've already activated an item, for example. Same applies for pets. So we have no cards right now, so we're going to just jump right into movement, and then at the end we'll explore and take a card from the lineup, and then we'll move the round timer down as usual. Okay, so I'm going to start the first turn of the second tutorial scenario. Set up my board so that I can try to get through this gap in the wall. I'll tumble this way. That activates my tumble skill, which is associated with my right arm. I'll tumble in that direction through the gap in the wall. Then, because I've tumbled, I get to activate the face that's on top. In this case, it is jump. And I probably could have planned this better, but we'll just live with it. And I'll jump over one space and land here. I am now completed my movement. I've moved as far as I can. And now I will explore. So I'm looking at my options here. And it's often wise to have items and pets because they're going to give us the ability to do something every turn. And I'm trying to figure out what my best strategy is going to be here. And there's a chance that I might not complete this scenario here, but we're going to do our best to do that. So I'm going to take the spring launcher because that'll let me place a spring every turn. So I can't play it this turn. The exploration phase marks the end of my turn. So I take this card and put it into my hand, and then I will refill this for the end of my turn. We'll move the round tracker down 1, and if we were playing world events we would worry about that, but we're not, so and we can start again. So I now have the spring launcher in my hand, so I'm going to play that here to my item slot, and I can place a spring token within one space of my hero, so within 7 spaces of my hero each turn. Now we'll talk a little bit about the rules for placing tokens. The rule for placing tokens outside of the range rule is that they can be placed anywhere on the board except in pits, on respawn points, on tokens that were placed at the start of a scenario, which we call scenario tokens. So you can't cover important things that are part of a scenario. Can't cover spawn points, and you can't place them into pits. The exception to that is a wall, but you can read about that in the rulebook. So that means I can use a token, so like this spring, to hover up a wall, which lets me move through it. Problem is that if I were to move in this direction, I would jump directly over the objective I'm trying to reach. So I'm going to place it actually right here. We'll put it right there and see what happens. Still think this isn't ideal, but we'll just do it anyway. So I'm going to move forward, and my feet is slide, and I can slide one space. So I'll slide one space onto this spring, and now I can jump over one space in any direction. So I'm trying to figure out what the best way for me to jump here is in order to get to that number 2 spot. So I'm guessing, and look at my little character here and sort of figure out what would happen on my next turn. So if I jump there, I have access to that, which is diagonal slide. I kind of want to try to get to my tumble again, if at all possible. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump here, which means on my next turn I can tumble to the south in this case, which gives me my tumble, which lets me tumble onto this and then do something else. So that's probably my sort of maximized movement potential here. So I didn't get to the checkpoint yet, but I will next turn. So now I get to explore again. So I'll find a card. So I will explore. I'm going to take the Molekin because in combination with, I'm actually going to take Flitter. So Flitter will let me make my dash +2. So I'll take that and put it in my hand, and that ends the round again. I will reveal a card, and then we'll move the round tracker down 1. So we only have 3 turns to try to get from here to there, and it's going to be tough. But I think the force is with us, so let's see what happens. All right, so we're starting our next turn. I'm going to play Flitter right away, which will increase my dash skill. Now, my plan was to tumble in this direction, bringing my tumble up. So I'm moving along top of the wall, which is fine. And then I can use my tumble skill to tumble one space here, which would then land me on top of the objective and let me jump. So I think what we're going to do is just that. So, but before we move, I'm going to place a spring token because I think that I'm going to end up on this space because I'm going to go here, here, and then I'm going to jump, and I'm going to jump onto this. I could also place it here, which, hang on, I'm going to try to figure this out. So, tumble, tumble, jump, jump, drink, or same thing, tumble, tumble, jump, jump. It really results in the same difference, actually. So we're just going to place this spring right here. Tumble. Now we activate our tumble skill. I'll tumble onto the number 2. I'll adjust my guy here to show that I've reached the number 2 checkpoint. Now my jump skill is up here, so I'll jump over one space onto this spring, which lets me jump over one space in a direction. I'll jump onto this water current, land on this, and now I will spin because of the current to that position. So I'm set up reasonably well here. Just need a little bit of luck. I would like to be able to get onto my face and see what happens. All right, so I will explore now, and I think this time I'm going to take this Dr. Ghost Pepper because we're going to need a pretty epic move here in order to make something happen. So I'll take the Dr. Ghost Pepper and flip up another card and adjust the round tracker. We have 2 more turns left to get 3 and then 4. I don't know if we can do it, but let's see. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm allowed to place a spring. I need to figure out where I can place this spring to maximize my movement. So if I tumble onto this, I get the number 3, and then I have the tumble skill, which I can only do once. So that's here, unless I double my tumble. So if I go here, that's tumble, I tumble 1 time, which gets me my jump. If I double my jump, I'm going to end up, kind of want to get to my dash, actually. So what I'm going to do is actually place the spring here, which might seem counterintuitive, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to play Dr. Ghost Pepper on my dash. So currently my dash skill is 1, 2, 3. And if I double it, I can now dash 6 spaces. So I'll discard this because I played it, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to tumble. I activate the number 3, showing that I've reached that spot. Now I have my tumble skill up, and I can tumble 1 time. I'll tumble onto the spring, which I will go here. And then I have to spin my character like this. Now I get to activate my face, which is a dash, and in this case I can move 6 spaces. So let's see what kind of magic we can work with this. So 1, 2 onto this spring to here, 3 onto this spring. Now I have 3 more moves. 1, 2, 3. And then I get pushed onto this whirlpool. That's a pretty big move with 6 dash. Kind of shows the power of that. So, but now I have to be careful what I'm choosing to, which direction I rotate here, because I want to set it up so that I can get over this pit. And if I look, jump is on my back, which we're not going to have access to. But we do have springs that we can use every turn. So if we can find a way to place a spring somewhere that's going to get us to what we want, I think we're good actually. So I'm going to rotate like this. That should do. And then we'll explore. So we have, actually, Moleken is going to be the perfect card for us. So I'll take Moleken, which Moleken lets us place a token directly beneath us. Normally that cannot be done. But this will let us place a spring directly beneath us and jump directly onto number 4 on our next turn. That's kind of fortuitous. It's almost like I planned it, but I didn't. Alright, so now we move the round tracker down 1, and we'll just barely win this here. So on our next turn, I'm going to play the Moleken, sorry, down, and when I play an item or pet, I can pick up one that I have in play and place it in my hand. So I'll place Moleken down, and I'll place a spring token with my spring launcher directly beneath my hero. And I now get to jump. So before my movement phase begins, I have now completed the scenario. Alright, we've reached the final scenario in the tutorial mini campaign, which is called Real Heroes Upgrade. And at this point, we're going to be playing the full Quodd Heroes experience. We're going to be upgrading our skills to increase our movement and exploration. We're going to be playing with world events at the end of our turn. We already experienced cards and movement, so now I'll explain the full turn. If you look at your reference card here, you'll see that at the end of there's an end of round section at the bottom here, which tells us what we do at the end of the round. So far all we've been doing is adjusting the time tracker. Now we're going to add world events to that and upgrading. We don't need to pass the first player coin if we're playing solo like I am. And there are no board elements that move, so we don't need to concern ourselves with those. But we will be playing a world event, adjusting the time tracker as before, and we'll be upgrading. So we'll upgrade when we get there, and then I'll explain how it works. Alright, so this scenario asks us to start back on the start line. We're using the same board layout, but we removed the rally tokens, the numbered tokens, and we've added some crystals and a drop-off or drop zone here at the end, just a pink square. There are 4 crystals on here because it gives us an option as to which one we want to pick up. If we were playing multiplayer, it would give all 4 players a chance to have one without having to fight over them. In this case, we're going to be playing with Ang Min again, and I'm going to start by, well, I'm going to take the same path I took last time. I'm going to place my character here, and I'm going to set my board up, my player board, to try to get over this wall on the first turn as I did before. So I will put tumble on my back, put jump on my feet, and I'm going to switch these 2 around just to see what happens. Okay, so we're ready to begin, and when we get to the end of the round, I'll explain the things that are new. Alright, so I will begin my movement phase by tumbling forward. I now have tumble face up on my back. I will tumble forward again, and now my jump is on my feet, so I'll jump over the wall. So that's the end of my movement phase. I have no cards, so I can't play cards. So now I'll move into the exploration phase, and I'll look at what we have available here. So I reshuffled the deck. The rules for the deck setup are the same as the previous scenario. So we only have cards with the single dot, and we only have 5 items and 5 pets in the deck. So I think that Shuffle-Upagus here, which lets us build a wall, break a wall, or build a tunnel each turn, is going to be pretty helpful in this scenario. So I'm going to take that card, and at the end of the exploration phase I will place another card from the top of the deck into the lineup. And now we reach the end of round phase, so we will go through these in order. So first thing, it says world event deck. So world events are generally an optional portion of the game, even though the rulebook doesn't specify that. But really, Playing with the world events adds a little bit of flavor, adds some sort of environmental chaos, let's say, to the game. If you're not a fan, or you or your playgroup are not really a fan of sort of chaos or effects that can sort of hurt all players or mess up plans, then you don't have to play with this deck. The vast majority of playtesters have actually quite enjoyed them. So we're going to play through them because we need to learn how the rules work. So the setup for this scenario asks us to use only the world events with the single dot on the bottom, which is what I've done. So I've done that, and I've shuffled the deck and placed it off to the side. So we're now at the phase where we're going to play a world event. So what happens is that a player, usually the first player, will flip the top card of the world event deck and read what it says. So this says, the current first player rolls the directional die. Slide all heroes 3 spaces in the direction shown in the die. So I could be in trouble here because I have pits around me. So we take the directional die, which is the 8-sided die, which has the sort of directional letters on it. So I roll this, and it says I have to move 3 spaces west. That's that direction in this case. So I'm going to move 1, 2, I hit this, and I fall into a pit. So I have just died and respawned here because of that world event. So I can now orient myself however I like because I respawned. And I need to figure out how I'm going to get past this wall. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to orient myself like that. So it's kind of unfortunate. I fell into a pit, but that's okay. So now we adjust the time tracker. And the next thing we do is upgrade. So now we're going to take our upgrade tiles that we set aside in the first scenario. They look like this. We're going to go through these in order because the rules actually state that you can play these in any order you like, but for learning purposes, I recommend that you play them in order. So that means I'm going to start with the number 1 upgrade tile. So one side has 1 additional movement point, and the other side has exploring more cards at the end of my turn. So I'm going to make the choice to add more movement to my skills. So that's the end of the round. We've adjusted everything, so we can take our next turn. So I will now, at the start of my turn, play the Shuffle Ugliest card, which is in my hand after the first turn. And that lets me break walls while I'm moving. So had I remembered that I had that in my hand, I would have probably have placed my character in a different position when I respawned. I would have oriented it differently, but it's fine. I'll learn to work with it. So what I'm going to do is right away, I'm going to break a wall, I think. Yep, so I could go this way and get this crystal and then dash twice. Actually, you know what? I am going to go that way. I'm going to try a different route, and I'm not being the most efficient about it, but whatever. So I will break this wall. Whoops, sorry, I'm spilling the tokens here. I will break the wall directly in front of my hero here. So now I can move through that space. So this item has now been used once and cannot be activated again this turn. Now I'll begin my movement by tumbling through the wall, and now I have the dash skill up, and now I can move 2 spaces with my skill. So for the first time in this tutorial, we get to move more than 1 space on our turn. And with dash, we can change direction with each movement point. So I will go 1, grab the crystal. So you have to land on top of a crystal to pick up a collectible. So a sheep, a crystal, or like an undergoat in the expansion, for example. You have to actually land on the space they occupy to pick them up. So you pick that up and you place it near your player board, but not on your player board. The spots on the top of your player board are actually used for scenarios which require locking. So once you drop something off, it's here and it's now safe and cannot be stolen by other players. But when you're just carrying it, it's next to your board to indicate that it can be stolen by other players. Anyway, so we have now tumbled and we have dashed 1 space. We have 1 more movement point left, so we will go to this spot here. And that's the end of our movement phase. So we have no cards. So now we can explore a card from the lineup here or take one off the top of the deck. I think what I'm going to do is take this Thinkberry Juice because it's going to allow us to activate our Q power without actually tumbling to our Q and rearrange our skills, which will maximize sort of our next turn. So I'm going to take that card. We'll replenish the lineup at the end of my exploration phase, and we move to the end of round phase. So the first thing we're going to do is play a world event card. This one says Badger Holes. Replace all tunnel tiles with pit tiles. So we don't have any tunnels on the board right now, so this has no effect. Place that into the discard pile. And then we move on to adjusting the round tracker. Go down to 3. We have quite a ways to go in 3 turns, but I think we might be able to manage it. Now we upgrade. So I'm thinking that once again, I'm just going to take cards this turn. just to vary it up a little bit. Even though I want to maximize my movement, I'm thinking that I'm going to like the result of cards, because I usually do. So we'll do that. So now we can start the next turn. I am going to start my turn by playing this Thinkberry Juice. Place it in the discard pile. And I can activate my Q power, which lets me explore to get a rune card. There is a rune card in the lineup, so I have to take the one that's visible. So I'll take this Ether rune, which lets me create a teleporter token or rearrange my skill tiles. It's very useful. And then I will rearrange my skills. So I want to get it so that tumble is on my face, because that's the direction I'm going to be tumbling into. And then I want to be able to tumble twice. So if I take my character here, and I see that he's oriented this way, and I tumble here to my face, then I get 2 tumbles with my tumble skill. So 1, 2, which means my back will be up when I get to this point. So I want that to have maximum utility. So what I'm thinking I'll do is put jump on my back so that I can jump over that pit. What I'm also going to do, actually, because I still have my Shuffleupagus here, is I'm going to place a tunnel token on top of this space right here. I have a range of 6 with my Shuffleupagus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can just reach that space. The reason I'm doing that is that tunnels are optional. And I haven't talked about tunnels yet, but I will now. So the way tunnels work is that when you step on a tunnel, you can travel to any other tunnel that's on the board. Right now there are no other tunnels, but if there were, when I landed on that space, I could immediately move to another space. If I had movement points remaining, I would not have access to them. So when you land on a tunnel and when you use a tunnel to travel across the board, your movement phase ends. But that's okay in this case, because that will be at the end of my movement. So now I've activated my Shuffleupagus to make a tunnel. Now I can tumble here. I now have tumble face up, and I can tumble 2 times because my tumble skill has a movement of 2. So 1, I really don't want this crystal, but I can pick it up anyway. I'm allowed to carry 2 things at a time. And then I tumble a second time to here. Now, because I've finished my tumble, I perform the skill associated with the top face of my character, in this case jump, and it's a jump of 2 spaces, so I can clear 2 spaces and land on top of this tunnel. So that's a pretty productive movement phase. So now I have no cards. Well, I do. I have this Ether Rune, which I can use this turn if I like. I'm going to save it for next turn because I think I'm going to use it to rearrange my skills. The second half of this ability basically lets me use the rearrange, or I could teleport. But I think I might use it for the second half of the card. So reach the end of the round. I forgot actually to. I got 2 cards in this. So this should actually be. We move into the exploration phase. So now I get to take 2 cards. I like the look of this Bolt Cola here because that's +3 to my dash skill. So if I can manage to get my dash skill accessible here, then I can make a pretty big move. So I'm going to take this card. I'm also going to take a second Ether Rune, just for fun. So now my hand looks like this. I have 3 cards. And your hand limit is 5 cards at the end of your turn. So at the end of the exploration phase, if you have more than 5 cards in your hand, you must discard down to 5 cards. But I'm okay, because I only have 3. So now we go to the end of round phase. We do go through this. So the first thing we're going to encounter is World Event. This says Technological Breakthrough. In turn order, each player... Oh, I forgot to replenish this lineup of cards at the end of my turn. Turn order... Each player without an item card in play reveals cards from the top of the exploration deck until they find an item card and puts it into play. I must actually take a card from the lineup first. Actually, no, this actually says from the top of the deck. So we flip cards into the discard pile until we find an item card. And I found a Spring Launcher card. So this goes immediately into play because that's what it says on the World Event card. And then we move on to adjusting the round tracker. We have 2 turns left, and then we upgrade. So this time we're at the number 3 upgrade. So this one is a special one. On the movement side, which is the green side, we add another movement point, and we are allowed to change directions with each of our movement skills. So now they don't have to just go in a straight line. We can change directions with each of them. That's quite powerful. On the reverse side, we get an additional card plus a second additional card off the top of the deck when we use during our exploration phase. So that would mean we got 4 cards at the end of our turn instead of 2, which is what we have now, or changing directions with our movement skills. So I'm just going to take movement, so we can demonstrate that skill. So I took the movement side of the number 3 upgrade, and we can begin the next turn. So starting the turn, I look at my items and pets here, and I have lots of ways to make tokens. Each turn I can make a spring. Cannot place them directly beneath me, but I can do things like place a spring here, for example, to essentially remove that wall and let me jump to this point right at the start of my turn. And it's okay to land on top of a wall, so I don't even need to use that. But I think what I'm going to do, because I finished my turn on a tunnel, I'm going to place another tunnel on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll just place it in a straight line, which means because I'm standing on top of a board element, I can activate it outside of my movement phase and move to here. So I've just taken a giant leap forward without actually doing anything yet. The next thing I'm going to do is play an Ether Rune, and I'll use the ability that lets me rearrange my skills. So what I'm going to do is place Tumble on my, where it is now actually. And then what I'm going to try to do is place a spring here. Sorry, I can actually use shuffle up because I actually did that already, so I've already made a tunnel. So I can't do that. I can place a spring here and lets me land here, which would then let me activate a tumble twice. Spring, tumble, tumble, and I could put dash on this arm. So I'm just going to do this, and we should be able to finish this turn. So what I'm going to do is play Bolt Cola to increase my dash plus 3. I don't think I need it, but I'll play it anyway. So now instead of 1, 2, 3 movement, I have 6 movement with my dash skill. I will place a spring on this wall, and I'll begin my movement phase. So I did all of that prior to movement. Now I tumble onto the spring, land here. Now my tumble skill is up, and I can tumble 3 times. But I'm going to tumble 1, 2 times. Now my dash is up, and I finish the scenario. So I have now carried the crystals to the drop-off point, and they can be placed on my player board. So that sort of demonstrates the power of card play. So in 1, 2, 3, 4 turns, I got from the start to the end of the board.
Thanks for watching the tutorial, guys. If you have any additional questions, ask them in the comments. You can also find us on Board Game Geek if you search for Quodd Heroes there. There is a FAQ linked to one of the Board Game Geek posts, which answers a lot of rules questions. And also I'm quite active here, sort of in all of the various social media channels. Board Game Geek on Facebook. Check out the Quodd Heroes Society Facebook group. I strongly recommend that you do that. There's lots of sort of interesting information there. How people have organized their minis or their games, painted their minis, people ask questions. So it's quite interactive. Also on Board Game Geek, I'm there. There's Quodd Heroes community forum as well, which isn't quite as active yet. So there's lots of ways that you can reach out if you have questions. It's important for me as the creator of this game that people understand the rules and learn how to play properly, because I think it's a pretty fun game when you do that. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.